Good morning, my brothers and sisters. Today is the 196th episode of Be With Me 7 Minutes of Biblical Wonder, and we welcome listeners now from France, Russia, Germany, and a bunch of other countries. So if you're new to the podcast and from one of those countries, especially welcome today. The title of today's wonderment is that Jesus is not a good man. And we'll develop that thought here in just a little bit. The context of the story is Jesus is considering going to the Feast of Booths, and that's in John chapter 7. So he's in Judea. He's in Galilee in the north, and he's considering going to Judea in the south, and initially he tells the disciples that he's not yet ready to go there, so they take off and go, and eventually Jesus goes, and then the place of the story is going to be there. So yesterday we talked about, in a previous episode, we talked about hating Jesus, which is actually a reasonable response. There's a psalm that says, they hate me without reason. And we kind of made a little bit of an argument that the offensive things that Jesus says, it's not unreasonable to hate him. If Jesus tells people that their works are evil, that when you hate Jesus, I think there's a relatively good reason for that. So that's up in verses 6 and 7. So I'll start there. Jesus said to them, "My time has not yet come, but your time is always here. The world cannot hate you, but it hates me because I testified about it that its works are evil. You go up to the feast. I am not going up to the feast, or I'm not going up to the feast yet, for my time has not yet fully come." And after saying this, he remained in Galilee. But after his brothers had gone up to the feast, he also went up. Not publicly, but in private. And then these three verses are the ones I wanted to focus on today. The Jews were looking for him at the feast and saying, "Where is he?" So they are questioning location. Then verse 12, and there was much muttering about him among the people, while some said, "He is a good man." Others said, "No, he is leading the people astray." And then verse 13, yet for fear of the Jews, no one spoke openly about him. So the verses today, we start with, where is he? A location, a physical part of where is Jesus? But then it moves very quickly into verse 12. There was much muttering about him among the people, while some said, "He is a good man." Others said, "No." And I agree with the people here that say no. Jesus is not a good man, and here's what I mean by that. In a certain sense, he is a good man. He demonstrates compassion and pity and patience, and he was a good educator and a good demonstrator. But here's the problem with Jesus, is he says that he's Lord. So remember the story, previous episode, where Jesus goes to Nazareth. He preaches in the temple at Nazareth. He brings up these stories from the Old Testament about the widow of Zarephath. And at the end of that, after opening the scroll of Isaiah and said, "Hey, this is about me. This prophecy in Isaiah is actually about me," which is essentially him saying, "I am Lord. I am the person that this prophecy is about." And at the end of the day, the people from Nazareth, his own town, his own heroic hometown people, they try to throw him off a cliff, appropriately so, because he says he's Lord, and they make the conclusion that he's not, and so because that's blasphemy, they throw him off a cliff. So that's actually a very reasonable conclusion. So here we see some people fighting and saying, one says he's a good man, which is the thing he cannot be. Why? Because he says he's Lord. So if he says he's Lord, and I'm borrowing from C.S. Lewis's argument here, you have three choices. One is he's actually the Lord. We'll save that for the last. The other two are he knows he's not the Lord, and he thinks he is. Well, that's a person that's, we see those people today saying they stand on the street corner and are mentally ill, and those people merit our pity. So either he's a lunatic, and our response should be pity because he's not Lord, or he knows he's not the Lord, but he says he is, and he's a liar. And that seems to be what the people are saying here, is no, he's willfully leading the people astray. And if he's a liar, then he merits our scorn and probably resistance. So C.S. Lewis says the one thing he cannot be is a good man, because a good man doesn't say that he's Lord. So if he says he's Lord, you have three choices. One is that he's a lunatic, that he's not the Lord, and he thinks he is. The second is that he's a liar, that he's not the Lord, and he knows he's not the Lord, so he's really a deceiver. And then the final thing is that he is the Lord. So the one thing he cannot be is a good man. So he can't be this good man, good teacher. And then here's what happens is, verse 13, the Jewish authorities believe that he can't be the Lord, and they cancel him to the point that the people can't even discuss him openly because they fear the Jews. So he gets canceled, if you will. So I wanted to emphasize this point. If you want to cancel Jesus, and if you feel that he's disturbing and crushing and displacing, and that he's elbowing in and he's testifying against you and saying you're evil and, hey, I don't like that. And if you kind of get to the conclusion is, I don't like the Bible very much, I think you're in good company. I think you're showing good understanding. You're in a good position. Welcome to spiritual truth. Welcome to the drawing of God. So if you're a listener who doesn't believe in Jesus, and we especially welcome non-believing or pre-believing listeners, know this: you're in good company. Welcome to the faith. And specifically, I prayed for you this morning that you would be disturbed, just like these people were disturbed. So I, in a sense, agree with people in verse 12, where one group says he's a good man, and others say, no, he can't be that. Now, they make the wrong conclusion here. They make the wrong conclusion and say that he's a liar and he's leading the people astray. But hey, I challenge you, consider him. He's actually the Lord. Maybe he's drawing you today. So stay, if you're a non-believer, stay with me as we be with me. We'll see you tomorrow.